So good morning and welcome to another podcast episode. My name is Philippa Haynes.
And I'm Mark Lee. This is the 48th episode of the Accountant Success Secrets podcast.
Yes, indeedy. How we've managed that, I don't know. Anyway, normally Mark and I are interviewing an accountant or a bookkeeper who is doing great things, has years of experience, and whose stories can inspire and encourage other accountants and bookkeepers around the UK.
Absolutely. And every week in around 30 minutes, our aim is to provide some fundamental insights for you, our loyal listener. And beyond that, we also try to fit in regular reflections episodes like this one. So today we're reflecting on 4 of our most recent interviews, and we'll both share and discuss something from each interview that resonated with us personally.
Yeah, absolutely. I really enjoy these episodes. But just before we do that, a word about the sponsor of our podcast, Pinnacle Global, which is a trusted outsourcing partner with over 120 clients in the UK and Ireland. Pinnacle's CEO, Mayank Pandya, is a chartered accountant based in London, and he has a passion to encourage innovation and excellence in the accounting profession. Pinnacle has offices in the UK and offshore delivery centres across India, employing over 250 high-quality staff. With a strong focus on quality assurance, Pinnacle has helped many UK accounting firms to scale their capacity and operations. So to find out more, please visit www.pinnacleoss.co.uk. You'll also find the link online wherever you're listening to this podcast.
Indeed. And also supporting the podcast is the Tax Advice Network. Their website enables accountants to choose specific specialist tax advisors for general tax support or for help across any of over 100 areas of tax. It's free to use, and you can check it out at findataxadvisor.online, where you can also register to get weekly tax tips written especially for general practitioner accountants.
Yes, indeed, indeed. Right, let's get on to our first reflection of the day. We're going back to episode 44 and our 36th interviewee, Dave Burr, who runs Carroll Accountants in Bourne End, Buckinghamshire. He's focused on the pub, hotel, restaurants and hospitality trade, not just because he likes them or has an interest in the sector, but because he's worked in it and has a passion for it. And that really came across throughout the interview. And what I will say is, just having a look at the stats, this was an episode that lots of people really enjoyed. The numbers went through the roof. So we're delighted for Dave.
Absolutely, that's brilliant. And between us, we're going to stop saying absolutely. I keep doing it. I think you do as well. Anyway, a couple of things I wanted to reflect back on. I'll share one, then let you say something, and then I'll come back to the other one. But firstly, and inevitably, of course, I would pick up on this, wouldn't I? He mentioned a mentor that he has in a larger firm who got to know him early on when Dave subcontracted his services to that firm. And it was his mentor who really believed in him and encouraged Dave to focus on building up his own practice. And I could relate to this because many of the more successful accountants that I've spoken to over the years credit a mentor for encouraging them along the way. And my own mentoring clients often very kindly credit me with them moving forwards because they trust me and they know I believe in them and their potential, just like a mentor from your past might do. And sometimes we all need that external validation and support.
Indeed, indeed. So, I mean, for me, Dave, I really enjoyed speaking to Dave. I think he's a fantastic example of somebody who really is specializing. I think we talk about niche, and sometimes people think that that's overly onerous or, focusing for the sake of it. But actually, Dave has this background in hospitality, and when you really genuinely have that specialism, you can bring so much more to your clients, all of that value. So he started to talk about, he gave advice beyond the numbers. He could do stock taking audits for them. He could help with rent negotiations. I mean, yes, some of that is all about finances, but because he's been there and done it himself, he's really able to look at something and go, that doesn't make sense. And I think a really fantastic piece of value is his ability to write a business plan for you as well, which I think is, really something special, because he's been there, done it himself. So that, from a specialist perspective, I think you can't do better than that. I have another point as well, Mark, but I'm going to let you go with your second before I talk about my second.
Right, thanks. And I will just also just add that in the last week or so, on one of the Facebook groups I'm in, somebody posted and said that they've just picked up a new pub client. Is there anything special they need to know? And I have to say, a number of people commented and offered ideas. Nobody got close to the range of topics that Dave had mentioned during our interview with him. And I did suggest that the person asking the question might want to listen to that episode and or reach out to Dave as well.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic.
Yeah. Anyway, the other point that I wanted to highlight was Dave's approach to networking when he started out, because he knew how important it would be to meet prospective clients and introducers, which is why a lot of accountants go bookkeeping. But he quickly decided not to attend random local business networking events or even a regular local group, which is what lots of us have done in the past. And I know lots of accountants have done it in the hope of bumping into ideal clients and potential introducers. Dave, though, he recognized that he would have more success by networking at trade and industry events, where he'd be confident of bumping into exactly the right sort of people. And because he'd worked in the industry and was already building up client-focused stories and case studies, he used these to routinely pick up business and introductions. So for those listeners doubting the value of networking, I'd suggest that Dave's story supports the argument that networking works if you do it right.
Yeah, indeed. So my second observation around Dave, and for him, he was very honest about this, and he said that when he started his business, he did some networking and etc. and marketing, and then got really busy and decided that he'd hit the jackpot and he didn't need to do anything anymore. So he stopped all of his marketing activity, and he said a few months down the line he realized that he got absolutely no prospects, no calls coming in, zero, zilch, nada. And he realized then that actually he dropped those marketing activities, and it had really gone slightly quiet. So I think even when you're in a position of success and you're busy, you always have to think about that next one, and never drop the ball. So that would be a second point that I think was really important from Dave's episode.
Absolutely. And there we go. I said it again.
Yes, you did. You did. So who's next? Who are we talking about next? Yes, we're going to be talking about Emma Fox now, the founder of Fresh Financials. Over to you, Mark. Let's hear what you have to say.
Well, this was episode 45, and Emma was fascinating because she'd started out as a small practice, but after emergence and recent acquisitions, her practice now has 4 directors and over 50 staff, which is huge compared to the practice that she originally started. And there was a bit of serendipity that occasioned that. I particularly loved her emphasis on the human touch, both within the teams, they call them pods in her practice, and actually one of my clients does that as well, and also ensuring that they're in touch with clients every day. And they're keeping their clients' bookkeeping up to date every day. Now, that will be an anathema to many people listening to this podcast, I'm sure. She said some clients it only takes 5 minutes, others takes much longer. But that means they have no backlogs and they can provide up-to-date financial data to clients and to their clients' accountants whenever it's required. And so that's them providing that human touch with their clients and constant contact with them. Other mail services are available. But that emphasis on the human touch also extended to the client onboarding process, which,
Yeah.
from the way Emma described it, you'll have to listen to the podcast to learn more. It means I'm sure every client feels confident and comfortable that they're in safe and competent hands from the outset. And something I often stress with clients is if you can ensure that clients feel comfortable from the outset, from that initial call, that initial pitch, the first thing you do with them, give them some understanding of what to expect from the early part of their relationship, even before you start doing any real work for them. It helps clients to feel more confident and comfortable, as I say, that they're in safe and competent hands from the outset.
Yeah.
And if something then goes wrong or isn't quite right, they're more likely to allow that without going, oh my goodness, I made a mistake here. First impressions, you never get a second chance to make them.
Yeah, I was fascinated by, she used the term triage for
Yeah.
onboarding. Um, and and then she talked about divvying it up, so making sure that she knew exactly what needed to be done, what the type of client was, and being able to insert that into the day-to-day jobs and responsibilities of the team, so that nothing really got dropped. And I love that. The other thing I loved about what Emma had to say was the fact that she was unashamedly, we work primarily with accountants. We are their bookkeeping function. Yes, they have direct clients, but a lot of the time, as she stressed, they are just the best bookkeeper that you can have, and they support the accountants. And I think that the message I would love to say to people who are listening to this is, understand what your offer is. So when I say, what is your offer? What's your brand offer? Just make sure that you know what you're doing. So for her, it's like, we are doing 24/7 kind of checking up on our each client every day. We are supplying pretty much a real life version of that particular client, and so the accountant knows when they go into that particular file, it's absolutely up to date. Now that is an offer, that is something that they have decided they're going to do, that is their focus, and that is exactly 100% where they're going. So I love that real focus, that a previous employer would have called it maniacal focus, which I love, this kind of real maniac of kind of, this is what we do. But I think it's important. So that was a really good example for me.
And I'd echo that, because there are so many bookkeepers who do work for clients and for accountants, but don't have the clarity that I think Emma and her team have, of ensuring that the accountant and the client really understand how everything the different services fit together, who does what. And because they have that clarity of focus, it's easier for them to explain it and for everybody to understand it than perhaps it is for some other bookkeeper accountant relationships. So again, maybe go back and listen to that episode 37 episode 45 to hear more about how Emma does that.
Yeah,
and we now
that's
move
gold dust. Yep.
Yeah. We now move on to interview 38 on episode 46, featured Leander Daddow, founder of Celtic Bookkeeping in Cornwall. And another inspiring business owner whose firm is more than just what some people might think of as bookkeepers. These days, she told us that her clients are paying average fees of £300 a month. But like so many bookkeepers and accountants, she admitted to starting out not valuing the service that she provided and pricing too low. Must have taken some time to overcome that. And I loved her admission that at one point she realized that she wasn't running a business, but more of a charity, because her staff earned more than she did. And sadly, I know that's not uncommon. And she eventually succumbed to the advice that she'd received to raise her fees. And although that led to a loss of 20% of her clients, oh my goodness, her turnover doubled and profits increased too. And I bet that change also crucially reduced the stress and pressure of running and building her practice. And I've lost track of how many times I've supported and coached accountants through a round or two of fee increases for clients and helped them to move to a place where life is easier and they have more confidence when discussing their fees.
Yeah, it was a lovely interview, wasn't it? I think I would be missing a trick if I didn't talk about her story and her brand. And whilst that isn't totally integrated into where they're going as a business, and I've chatted to her about that, what I do love is that Leander has found a business or a way of working that suits her and suits her aspirations. So she talked a lot about they've been doing up this lorry and they're going to be traveling all over the world. And I'm sure there are a lot of people who are really interested in hearing about this work-life balance. But what I think is the really important message there is that it's hard work. She's actually equipped her staff, she's put in processes, she's realized what she's good at and what she's not good at, and how she can do her part of the heavy lifting while she's away. And she said to us that she can't do the day-to-day stuff because she doesn't respond quickly enough. But she's realized that if she works early in the morning and in the evening, she can have the day off doing whatever they're doing, visiting with the children, whatever. But then she's got those moments, that consultancy part at the end of the day or the start of the day where she can do that. Now, when she spoke to us, she was in Cornwall. They hadn't started yet, but she was already, she'd had to find somewhere to sit that was quiet, that meant that she could do the interview while her kids were doing some kind of club. That is, it's not for the faint-hearted, but what I love about her is that she's living her brand and living what's important to her. And given that she's from the Royal Navy as well, I thought it was really interesting that she's gone from the Royal Navy into an accounting firm. What she's actually done is she set up a life which is pretty similar to where she was before. So she was traveling a lot, kind of working against the clock probably. But she's doing the same thing now. And that is when I talk about where have you come from and how do you insert that into your brand and your business. This is a classic case of her. She's that sort of personality. She's come through that experience, and actually, without thinking about it, she set up a similar experience for how she works now. And that is all about her personality and her brand. And I hope that in the future she will do more with that and more with her team to kind of really convey to other people just how they work, and also get clients who are quite adventurous as well. So looking in the mirror and finding those business owners who actually are in a similar disposition and a similar kind of situation. So I love that.
I get that completely. And I think it's really important to recognize, and this is true for a number of the people we've interviewed, is that over a period, they've almost partly migrated away from being the bookkeeper or being the accountant to running the business of bookkeeping and accounting, and employing people who do the bulk of that work so that they can focus on running the business, because somebody has to do that when you've got staff. And it's perfectly feasible. There are plenty of successful accountants who are also doing the day-to-day work as well as looking after the staff, running and building, growing the business to the extent they want to grow it. But some people are able to make that switch and realize that they enjoy more running the business than doing the day-to-day work. And that's a natural transition. It's not right for everyone, but certainly some of my clients are doing that. And that's one of the reasons why they look to me to mentor and support them, because they're running a business for the first time and they want a sounding board, somebody independent to help them do that. Anyway.
Yeah, I mean, what you said there reminds me as well that the importance of having the right staff and setting up the right culture. If you're going to be working like Leander does, then you need to know that you have people within the office space who understand where her dreams and her aspirations and what she wants to achieve, but they're okay about that. And actually, when we spoke to Leander, she knows that in a few years' time her business partner might decide that she wants to take off, and so they will kind of basically change roles and she'll come back. So there's this fluidity as well,
Yeah.
certainly with the team members, so that nobody feels kind of left out, that there is actually the opportunity to live that kind of experience if they want to. And that's important, I think.
It is. And within the practice, I think she mentioned this colleague who is her left hand woman, running, largely running the place. And Leander wouldn't be able to do what she does without such a strong, trusted support. And that doesn't happen overnight either, generally.
No, and I think it's true to say that Leander had, they've been going for a number of years.
Yeah.
So this hasn't just come out of the blue when she set up. She's actually spent time with everybody to ensure that, the business is actually, the foundations are good.
Yeah.
Anyway,
really
I guess we should move on, shouldn't we? And we should talk
Indeed.
about our final guest. Last but not least, is Lara Manton of LJM Bookkeeping, based in Peterborough. And she was our 47th episode. There we go.
Last
very
week's
interesting.
Yeah. And a key point I wanted to reflect on from this interview is that Lara was very clear about only doing the work that she enjoys. She says she does bookkeeping and is very happy leaving tax returns and accounts prep work to the accountants. She chooses to work alone because she needs to conserve her energy, having been diagnosed with ME as a teenager. And she feels that recruiting and managing staff would take on too much of her limited conserves of energy. And how wise is that, not overstretching herself? And she also enjoys going beyond the sort of the if I can call it the simple bookkeeping. She also enjoys streamlining clients' finance systems. And she shared some wonderful examples of how some quite large clients have benefited from her input here.
Yeah.
And last year, I think she set up a separate business website distinct from her bookkeeping practice to promote those distinct services under a separate trade name. Was it ACEXL, Automation Consultancy and Efficiency?
Yep.
And this idea of focusing on doing what you enjoy rather than what you think others believe you should do also comes up in some of my mentoring conversations with accountants. It's not always easy to transition a practice in order to do that, to move on to only doing the work that you enjoy. So if somebody feels they can't do that, I'll often flag up two alternatives. One is the option, well, you can continue feeling stressed, frustrated, and disappointed with the way things are going. The alternative, if you're not prepared to make any changes to your client base and workload, is to focus on those elements that you do enjoy and to look at how you can spend more time on them and less on the parts that drain your energy. And again, that really is quite a common topic of conversation with some of my mentoring clients, certainly at the start of a relationship I have with them. Not everyone, but quite often. And I think just Lara's focus, just doing what she enjoys, what she's capable of, and what people will pay her well for, were absolutely wonderful.
Yeah. So I'll admit, full disclosure, that Lara is a client of mine, or has been. And she has a fantastic story to tell, which I think, you've already kind of mentioned, which is this kind of chronic illness that she was diagnosed with when she was kind of 19, I think it is. And it's had a really dramatic effect on her personal life and her professional life over those years. But what she's managed to do, it's a bit like the conversation we talked about Dave Burr and also Emma. She's focused on what she can do, what is core to her, and core to her is doing something that is effective and efficient. So she's put in place a business model really that she can deal with, that she can cope with, and that won't make her too stressed or sort of ill again. Um, and it's an offer that is very distinct, as you said, but that comes precisely because of her story and because of her background. And when I worked with Lara, she didn't actually think that she had a story. So when I sort of delved into all of this, she hadn't really made that kind of mental leap of, oh goodness, actually I do my business because of all of that kind of backstory. That is the rationale behind how I do business. And I think that's a compelling story for anybody. You don't necessarily need to have an illness, but I think when somebody asks, oh, why do you do what you do, she can start to talk about the need for her to be as clear, to be as targeted as possible. And I think that's a really strong message for anybody else, which is, if you want to be clear, if you want to be efficient and effective, then I am the best person to help you, because I've done that. I've been there and I've done it. So one of her strapline is better to run and not walk, or something like that. I can't suddenly just yeah, why walk when you can run? There we go. Why walk when you can run? And that was specifically this idea of speed, being speedy, being efficient, be effective. And I think that is just a wonderful example of being successful through adversity. So I would encourage all of those people who think I don't have a story to actually look back at your life and look back at what you've learned, your beliefs, your ethos, all of the different events that have made you into the person that you are. And yes, that sounds all fluffy, but actually it makes a whole load of sense when you think about what is my offer. And actually, across Dave, across Emma, across Lara, and across Leander, you can see that there's a whole load of their personality that's come into the business that they're operating now, which I think is lovely, actually.
It is, and I also think that it's one of your superpowers is helping people to pull all that together and to realize what it is that's driving them, to have that consistent story and personal branding. And don't they feel better about themselves and their practice, and don't they achieve greater success once they've done that? I know another one of your clients has won, I've lost track of how many awards, partly on the back of rebranding to reflect who they really are rather than who they were trying to pretend to be at the outset.
Yeah, I mean, it's all about clarity at the end of the day, and understanding the rationale behind what you do. And that's not about necessarily kind of your personal clarity, so family, children, whatever. It's about that greater, that higher purpose in business, which is, why do you get up and work with your clients? Why do you do what you do? Which is really important.
Yeah.
Good. Well, I guess we have reached our 30 minutes again, and time has flown, but I think we've really pulled out some interesting stuff today, and I hope that people will go back to those episodes that we've talked about and really drill down into a little bit more about their story.
I hope so as well. We'll be back to our normal interview format next week, and then there'll be another reflection session like this in a few weeks' time.
Yeah, indeed. So actually next week, I got all excited. We're going to be talking to Neil Criddle next week, aren't we? I thought it was this week, but hey, we're looking forward to speaking to him. But in the meantime, do contact myself or Mark if you'd like to be interviewed on a future podcast in 2025. We're already in April, so you've got a bit of time there to get yourself prepared and to have a chat with you. Have a chat with us. This is somebody you'd like to recommend as well that we interview. We're all ears. Please do get in touch and let us know.
Absolutely. Did it again. Absolutely fabulous podcast. You'll find all of the interviews and episodes we've mentioned on LinkedIn, YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts, and anywhere else you listen to your podcasts. If you feel we deserve it, please give us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, because that specifically helps us to reach an ever wider audience. And please also let us have your feedback and share the love online too.
Yeah, just before we finish up, we do need to thank our sponsor, Pinnacle Global Group, your trusted outsourcing partner. Do check out their website and let their CEO, Mayank, know that you heard about them through the Accountant Success Secrets podcast.
And thanks to the Tax Advice Network, the easiest way for accountants to reach specialist tax advisors. Remember, there's no charge for using the website. You just pay the tax advisor who you choose to use. Findataxadvisor.online is where you can find the tax advisors and where you can also register to try their weekly tax tips written especially for general practitioner accountants. Whew. Well, should we quickly share our contact details in the traditional way? How can listeners find out more about you and Insight 101?
You can find me on LinkedIn or on my website, insight101.co.uk. And as you can see, I'm all about supporting accountants with their story, with their brand and their strategy. And I think today the episode has shown really well how it brings an enormous amount of benefit. So if you're interested in learning more, then do get in touch. So Mark, how can listeners find out more about you and your support services for accountants?
Online everywhere, I'm Bookmark Lee. Even the business card is a bookmark. And most of the accountants I support have been running their practice for a while without co-directors or partners. And as you've heard, they tend to have reached a stage where they want a decent sounding board to help them feel more confident as regards plans, challenges, key decisions. And I love hearing my clients tell me how much better motivated or excited they feel after our one-to-one conversations. I also run an online sole practice club for sole practitioner accountants. We meet online once a month for 90 minutes. And either way, I'm always happy to have an initial conversation. No obligation, no strings, and no pushy sales techniques either. In any event, if we're not yet connected, you've listened to this podcast, please reach out and connect with both Philippa and me on LinkedIn and follow the podcast pages on LinkedIn and on Facebook.
Yep, that's it. We're done for another episode. We'll be back next week with our 40th interviewee, Neil Criddle. We'll look forward to that.
Very much indeed. Many thanks, Philippa, the brains behind this operation. Until next time on the Accountant Success Secrets podcast, or anywhere else we might meet online or in real life. Bye-bye for now.
Bye.